This is a facsimile of Shakespeare Sonnets published in 1609. In it are 3 sets of encryptions, on the cover, in the dedication, and in the verse. In the encryptions are messages including who the author is. It's the 3rd set in the verse that I'll be going over here. First though, this is John Dee's Monos Hieroglyphica, published a few decades before. Dee was a Hermetic philosopher of Christian mysticism and Pythagorean doctrine. He was a mathematician, an astrologer, a cryptologist, and an advisor to Queen Elizabeth. Monos Hieroglyphica is a treatise he wrote about this symbol, but concerning the sonnets, what I want to draw your attention to is this. Here he instructs the printer to carefully copy the various letters, lines, points, shapes, numbers, and other things. This means that every mark, dot, letter, or anything that might be perceived as a mistake is actually meant to be there. Things that have been misconstrued as printing errors or bad work by the printer are instead clues. This is key to understanding the sonnet codes. Dee also explains that Latin, Greek, and Hebrew are used, as well as the Kabbalistic methods of Gematria, Notarikon, and Temurah, which I'll explain as I go on. The sonnets have their meaning to the writer, but when they were published, things were added and changed so that when you see them you ask, why is that mark there? Why is this printed this way? Now the people involved in the publication knew that others who were familiar with Kabbalah or Rosicrucianism or whatever secret order, they knew that these people would recognize and understand the coding techniques being used, and would then be able to decipher the messages that were added during the printing process. As we start looking at the verse, notice that there are no marks next to the sonnet numbers. Not until we get to Sonnet 9. And then there's one here next to the turnover for 10. And a conspicuous dot below the turnover or. And then another here at 18. But then there are no more until we get to Sonnet 122. So why are these dots there next to these specific numbers? Well, just like in Monos Hieroglyphica, they're there by design. Gematria is a way of assigning numerical values to letters and vice versa, and the sonnet encryptions are based on the 23-character Latin alphabet shown here. You can see how this works. The letter A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, and so on. Now the characters that have been marked are 9, 10, the turnover word or, 18, and 122. If we convert these numbers into their letter equivalent, we get 9 equal I, 10 equal K, the word or, 18 equal S, but then there's no equivalent for 122. Initially I got stuck here, but then I saw a clue that unlocked the message. Now to see this, a true 1609 facsimile is required, not one that has been cleaned up or modified. Looking closer at the number for Sonnet 122, I noticed that the second 2 was in a different font compared to the one next to it or any other one throughout the text. You can see it's been altered, and I realized that it's actually a letter S printed in reverse. In Greek, an S is used in word final position. I thought if the letter is reversed, is the message encoded the same way? Meaning, is it to be read from right to left? So I started with the last numbers and worked my way back. 122 reversed or read from right to left is 221, and 18 is 81. There are no letter values for these, but the same character is used for Roman numeral 1 and the letter I, which was common printing practice for centuries. So if Roman numeral 1 and the letter I are the same, 221 and 81 can be written as 22, the letter I, 8, the letter I. This can now be converted with Gematria. Here's a close-up of the numbers for Sonnet 122. You can see the second 2's been altered, and on the page it looks like a Greek lowercase s in reverse. So when the marked sonnet numbers are written in reverse or read from right to left, the numbers for 9, 10, 18, and 122 are 221, 81, 10, and 9. But there are no equivalents for 221 and 81, so these are actually 22, and with the Roman numeral for 1 and the letter I being interchangeable, that's the sequence. converted with Gematria, you get 22 is equal to Y, I, 8 is equal to H, and I again. The OR is used bilaterally. 10 is equal to K, and 9 is equal to I. As it turns out, the first part of the message is in Hebrew, which is why it's meant to be read from right to left, and the second part is in Greek, all encoded by Gematria using Latin characters. This reminds me of what Dee wrote in Monas Hieroglyphica in regards to the languages and Kabbalistic methods used, and I can't help but think that he or someone familiar with his work designed the Sonnet encryptions. So what do these letters mean? I had no idea, so I typed the first letters and did a search and found out that Y-I-H-I are the first letters in the phrase Yihi Or, more commonly spelled Y-E-H-I-O-R, which in Hebrew means Fiat Lux, or Let There Be Light. This was perfect because the next letters in the code are O-R, Y-I-H-I-O-R. So encoded by Gematria, we have the phrase Yihi Or, Fiat Lux, or Let There Be Light, which is the first command given by God in Genesis. That's the first part of the message, which leaves the last two numbers. Here are the values as they appear. 10 in Gematria is K, 9 is I, K-I. The OR is used bilaterally in reverse, spelling rho. In Greek, the letters Kairos spell the first two letters of Christos and are used to draw the Kairos symbol. In Greek, Chi or Ki looks like an X, and Rho the letter P, thus the symbol. Christos means Christ, so the full message reads, Christos Fiat Lux, or Christ Let There Be Light. However, there's more hidden in this message, a double meaning. Numbers are equivalent to letters, but they can also symbolize things. For John Dee and Pythagoreans like him, numbers represented concepts or qualities, and by understanding them one could understand God and nature. This kind of numerology is found in painting, sculpture, architecture, and literature from the Renaissance. For Pythagoras and the ancients, the number 9, Aeneid, was thought of as the horizon, for it was the last single-digit number before the threshold of 10, decad, and its infinity of multiple-digit numbers. The singular word for circle is kyklos, but it is the concept of horizon being equivalent to the number 9 and defined as a limiting or bounding circle that is relevant here. The number 10, decad, is written with the Roman numeral X resembling a cross. Dee demonstrates 9 being the horizon and 10 a cross in Theorem 23 of Monas Hieroglyphica with a chart horizon of eternity. The horizon of eternity square has 8 numbers, 1 to 4 on the right, 5 to 8 on the left. 9 is represented by the word horizon written on the line just above the number 8. 10 is the large dotted X crossing through the middle of the square. This same 9 over 10 image is reflected on the page with Sonnet 9, with 10 below it on the turnover. Exactly as in Monas Hieroglyphica, the sonnets have 9 being the horizon or a circle positioned over 10, a cross. A circle above a cross is the planetary symbol for Venus. The planet Venus is among the brightest objects in the night sky, second only to the moon. It rises a few hours before the sun, and for this reason is known as the light bringer and the morning star. Interestingly, among his final words in the Bible, Jesus refers to himself metaphorically as Venus. The same metaphor is found elsewhere in the Bible. Using Latin Gematria, 9 equal I and 10 equal K, spelling the first part of Cairo, or Christos, but 9 and 10 by their symbolic definitions also suggest the circle cross symbol for Venus. Therefore, the cipher also reads, Venus, let there be light. Jesus and Venus are called morning stars, bringers of light, and in the sonnet number code they are both issued with the command from Genesis, Fiat Lux. The same message, Christos Fiat Lux, or Jesus let there be light, and a reference to Venus, is repeated 3 times within the pages of the verse. Now, it's always been assumed that the initials on the cover and dedication stand for the publisher Thomas Thorpe, but if you look at the beginning of Sonnet 122, where the sonnet number code ends, you see that the first word is thy, spelled with 2 T's, T-T-H-Y. This is not a mistake, and the initials appear nowhere else throughout the text. There's several suggestions as to what the letters stand for, and I have my own theory, but for now I just want to point out that if the letters stand for the publisher Thomas Thorpe, it makes no sense that he would hide his initials here at the end of an encryption. Now we get to the authorship question, and this is where the Kabbalistic methods of Notarikon and Temurah are used. With Notarikon, you can derive a new word by using the first letters of words from a phrase, creating an acronym. And Temurah is used to rearrange the letters to create a new word like an anagram. Looking at Sonnet 9, the first letter is I from the word is. Sonnet 10, the first letter is F from the word for. Then we have the letters from the marked word or. And then Sonnet 18, the first letter is S from shall. And then from Sonnet 122, the letter T from the double T spelling of the word thy. So by way of Notarikon, we have the letters I, F, O, R from the marked word or, S, and T. What do these letters mean? Well, by the third Kabbalistic method of Temurah, letters can be rearranged to make new ones. One word is F Rosy T, which is the abbreviated spelling of Fratres Rosicrucis, or Brothers of the Rosy Cross. This would explain the initials TT because some researchers claim that those initials stand for the Rosicrucian twin pillars of Solomon, the entrance to wisdom. F Rosy T makes sense, but the word we're looking for is FORTIS. What does it mean? Well, in Latin it means strong, but depending on how it's used, it can also mean brave or valiant. The words vir fortis means strong man or hero. The word vir in Latin means man, and used with the word fortis evokes the idea of a valiant or courageous man, a hero. This is taken from a book of correspondences during the reign of Queen Elizabeth. In it you'll see that certain people of the court were given numbers. Notice that there was a person called 40 who was a colleague of Cecil's but is never identified. When the dedication cipher was decoded, this phrase was discovered. These sonnets all by ever the fourth T. It would take way too much time to explain the cover and dedication encryptions, and they're the work of Alexander Waugh, so I'll just cut to the chase. 40, or the fourth T, is Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford. The work Alexander Waugh has done is unrivaled, not only with his decryptions, but with the evidence he's found contemporary with the times of de Vere's Shakespeare. I don't want to repeat his work. I want to present my own evidence, which, as it turns out, happens to support his theories. But why would de Vere be referred to as forties? Four in German is Veer, and the fourth in Dutch is de Vere. The name Oxford, Oxfordy, 4D sounds like 40, as does the fourth T. De Vere sometimes signed his name double V. In Latin Gematria, V equals 20, and double V, or VV, equals 40. It seems likely that the name was derived from Gematria and puns on name and number. Another number Waugh discovered pertaining to de Vere is 1740, from the name 40 and his being the 17th Earl of Oxford. An example of this can be found if you count the pages from the first sonnet. Sonnet 40 begins on the 17th page. When the dedication in the sonnets was deciphered, the message read, "These sonnets all by ever the fourth T," ever being an anagram of Vere, or short for E. Vere, Edward de Vere. Similarly, the message here is that these are 40s sonnets. The letters FORTIS are a signature. To reiterate, in Monas Hieroglyphica, Dee uses Gematria, Notarikon, and Temurah in the languages of Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. In the verse, sonnets 9, 10, the turnover word or, 18, and 122 are marked by dots or periods. Using Gematria, 9 equal I and 10 equal K. The first part of the message is in Hebrew, and when decoded and read from right to left, spells Yihi, or, and Kai, or Ki. The or is shared by both sides of the message and spells out Cairo, Yihi, or, Christos Fiat Lux, or Christ, let there be light. Using Notarikon, we take the first letters of each of the sonnets and the marked word or and get I from sonnet 9, F from 10, OR, S from 18, and T from 122. Then we use Temurah to rearrange the letters and get F Rosy T, or Fratres Rosy Cross, T being a cross. Using Temurah again, we get the word forties. Forties is Edward de Vere, and these are 40s sonnets. Using Temurah, several words can be made from the single word forties. First, in Danish, is spelled F-O-R-S-T. There's no letter I in the word, but as you'll see, it's used in the final message. In Greek, strophe means stanza. In Spanish, FORTIS means smear, but can also mean slander. In Latin, the word forties means strong, but in this context, we know that forties is referring to Edward de Vere, aka 40. Altogether, the words are forced, with the remaining letter I used in the final message, strophe, FORTIS, and FORTIS, or first stanza, slander, and I have beer FORTIS here because I think that's what's intended. Translated, the message reads, first stanza I slander FORTIS, or first stanza I slander Vere. Even read as I slander Vere first stanza, the message is there's defamatory information concerning Edward de Vere in the first stanza, or in the first sonnet. In the first sonnet, or the first stanza, the word rose is italicized and stands out on the page. The fourth line of the stanza speaks of an heir. Henry Wriothesley, or Rosely, was the third Earl of Southampton. The word rose is a reference to him, and the word heir in the fourth line, his child. The slander found in the first stanza refers to a scandal involving Edward de Vere, Henry Rosely, and Penelope Rich. Having no male heir, de Vere had Rosely father a child with Rich, his former mistress, as a surrogate. A male was born and raised as Henry de Vere, the 18th Earl of Oxford. Alexander Waugh explains this story thoroughly in his YouTube videos. The first Christos and Venus FIAT LVX message, as well as the reference to de Vere, is found encoded in the sonnet numbers outside the text of the verse. These same messages are found 2 more times within the verse. Reading the pages from right to left, there's a dot underscoring the word eclipses in Sonnet 60. Turning the page, where 60 begins, several clues are found. Starting at the top, in Sonnet 58, there's a dot above the letter S and the word times. And then, at the bottom of the page, there's a dot or period where it shouldn't be. There should be a comma, but instead there's a period, causing the line to read, Nativity once in the main of light. This is the definition of Christ or Christos, which is why a period or dot was added at the end of the sentence. The dot above the S in times and the one underscoring the word eclipses are printed on opposite sides of the same page. When held up to a light, the dots line up next to each other. Looking through the page from the side with eclipses, the word times appears backwards. Similar to the reversed S in Sonnet 122, the dot above the S in times is a clue that the word is meant to be read from right to left. The dot above the letter S functions as a period, spelling the word time. Time read from right to left is emit. Emit means to produce or send forth, or to issue formally and with authority. This is the definition of fiat, or let it be done. The dot next to the word light in the nativity line could signal that this is the light to complete the message. But light can also be found in the actual sonnet number of 60, and the collation mark lined up 5 lines directly beneath it. The Roman numeral for 60 is LX. In Gematria, E is the 5th letter. The Roman numeral for 5 is V. Add this V to LX, or 5 to 60, we get LVX, spelling looks, or light. So we have Christos defined by the line, nativity once in the main of light, emit from the word time read from right to left, which means fiat, and looks from the Roman numeral letters of 60 and 5. So encoded again by dots that shouldn't be there, we have the message Christos fiat lux, or Christ let there be light. Venus, like before, is hidden in Sonnet 59. This question mark shouldn't be there and serves as a clue. These 3 lines, denoted by the unnecessary question mark, define the planet Venus. From the line, the second burthen of a former child, a sun, S-O-N, can be the former child, but the second burthen of the second planet of the sun, S-U-N, is Venus. The next line, oh, that record could with a backward look. Backward look is a reference to Venus appearing to move backwards when in retrograde. The Cinetic Period is the number of days for a planet to be seen again from Earth in the same position with respect to the Sun. For Venus, this cycle is 584 days. Observed from the Earth over an 8-year period, the path of Venus draws a pattern called the Pentagram of Venus. In Sonnet 59, the line, even the 500th courses of the Sun, is an allusion to the planet's 584-day cycle. The number 584 can even be computed from the sonnet number of 58, where we get the word emit or fiat, and 59, where we find Venus. The difference between 5 and 9 is 4. Add this on to the previous sonnet number of 58 and get 584. Another clue that Venus is hidden here is the number 58 at the top of the page. Positioned like the top point of a star, this 58 represents the 5 petals of the pentagram of Venus drawn over an 8-year period. Interestingly, 5-8 is the golden ratio phi or phi, the proportion of harmony. For Pythagoreans, 5 pentad means marriage and is personified by the human being, the result of 3 female and 2 male. The pentagram star is a sacred symbol of light and is composed from 5 points of the body, the head, hands, and feet. A symbol for Venus is the 5-pointed star. The first letter in Venus is V, the same as the Roman numeral for 5. This V can also bring the light missing from the LX of Sonnet 60. 60 equal LX, add the 5 or V from Venus, and again we get LVX, looks, or light. The black dot underscoring eclipses could be an allusion to the transit of Venus. During a transit, the planet obscures a small portion of the sun and can be seen as a black dot moving across the face of the solar disk. Though the first scientifically recorded transit wasn't until 1639, people knew the event had taken place in the past. The Persian polymath Abu Ali ibn Sina, known to early Westerners as Avicenna, records that, "I say that I saw Venus as a spot on the surface of the sun." A transit of Venus did take place during Avicenna's lifetime in 1032 AD. It's possible that one more message can be derived from the marked words times, eclipses, and light. The personification of time is an aged man holding a scythe and hourglass, death. In the context of this message, time is symbolized by death, making the message, death eclipses light, with the inverse being Christos eclipses death. The reference to de Vere can be found on the previous page in Sonnet 57. 57 equals 17 plus 40. Again, this comes from de Vere being the 17th Earl of Oxford and his number 40. In Sonnet 57, the words "my sovereign" are in parentheses. The word sovereign refers to royalty. The words when and where are spelled with de Vere's double V's. So for a second time, there's the messages Christos and Venus, let there be light, and the reference to de Vere. Continuing from right to left, Sonnet 56 has the italicized word interim. An interim is an interlude or a pause, which sets up the third set of encryptions. The third set appears on the following page. Beginning with Sonnet 53 are these italicized words: Adonis, Helens, Grecian, and then in Sonnet 55, statues, and Mars. First, let's find Christos. It's not a mistake that Adonis appears in Sonnet 53. Adon means Lord, and Adonis was a personification of the sun. Like many gods of the ancient world, comparisons between Adonis and Jesus can be drawn. I'm not saying Jesus and Adonis were the same being, but it is a fact that historically and today, artists and researchers have compared some qualities of the two. A hint that the writer or publisher is implying this analogy is from the sonnet number in which the name occurs. Christians believe that the Messiah prophesied in the Old Testament book of Isaiah, chapter 53, is Jesus. By design, Adonis appears in Sonnet 53. In relation to the verse, Adonis is Christos. The words Helen's Grecian statues is a reference to the Venus de Medici, a Hellenistic marble sculpture depicting the Greek goddess of love, Aphrodite, or Venus. The statue was kept at the Via Medici in Rome for over 100 years between the 16th and 17th centuries. Helen of Troy, Queen of Sparta, was the daughter of Zeus and half-sister to Aphrodite, Venus. Sometimes the two were considered the same. Helen was worshipped as the goddess of beauty in Laconia and, according to Herodotus, was worshipped as the foreign Aphrodite in Egypt. Therefore, by way of analogy, we have a god whose name, Adonis, is very similar to Adon, which means Lord. He dies young, not impaled by a spear, but impaled by a boar, and by design printed in Sonnet 53, the same chapter number in which the Messiah is defined in the book of Isaiah. In Helen's Grecian statues is the Venus de Medici. So we have the Christos and Venus references. Fiat lux is found in Sonnet 55, marked by this unknown character here. It looks almost like the Hebrew character Yod, but whatever it is, its purpose is to draw the reader's attention. Reading the marked line, "Nor Mars's sword, nor war's quick fire shall burn." The word quick means to be living or something done instantly. Quicken means to rouse, waken, or activate. Fire means light, to light, or to give life or spirit to. Therefore the words quick fire, by their individual definitions, mean awaken light, or fiat lux. Similar to the second message, looks can be derived from Roman numerals. When writing Roman numerals, if one or more letters are placed after another letter of greater value, the amount is added. If a letter is placed before another letter of greater value, the amount is subtracted. L is 50, V is 5, X is 10. If you subtract 5V from 10X, you get 5. So L, 50, plus 10 minus 5 is 55. Once again, we have looks or light hidden in a sonnet number. So on this page, Adonis is Christos, Helen's Grecian statues is Venus, quickfire means to awaken light or fiat lux, and lux or light is found in 55 using Roman numeral math. Oxford is found in the same marked line from Sonnet 55. Mars' sword, or the sword of God, refers to a story told by the 5th century Roman diplomat and Greek historian Priscus. The sword had been lost but was rediscovered by a herder following a trail of blood in a field. An ox had wounded its hoof against the sword as it stuck upright out of the grass. The herder brought the sword to Attila, and it became a kind of scepter, symbolizing the king's right to rule. By the time the story was retold in the Constantinian excerpts, it was said that it was discovered through the agency of an ox. The words ox and sword refer to Oxford's rulership status. Anyone at the time of the sonnet's publishing familiar with the story would have gotten the reference. Another clue is the de Vere double V at the beginning of Sonnet 53, where this set of encryptions starts. So that's 3 sets of encryptions in the pages of the verse, in the marked sonnet numbers, on the pages with sonnets 57 through 60, and on the pages with sonnets 53 through 55, each, when decoded, read Christos and Venus, fiat lux, or let there be light, and refer to Edward de Vere. Let me repeat that these messages weren't necessarily intended by the writer of the sonnets. They were added during publication by arranging the sonnets in a specific numerical order and including certain points and marks to serve as clues. Who was responsible for the encryptions? Obviously it was someone familiar with Monos Hieroglyphica, Kabbalah, and astronomy. It had to have been John Dee. His initials are found in the dedication cipher, and if you look at the lone dot below the turnover word or, which is the only dot printed outside the text of the verse, it's positioned below Sonnet 14. In Gematria, D is equal to 14. There are more messages in the verse referring to Rosy, Penelope Rich, and Henry de Vere, the 18th Earl of Oxford, and maybe I'll get into them another time. The cover and dedication encryptions have been solved by Alexander Waugh, and I highly recommend anyone interested in the Shakespeare authorship question watch his YouTube videos. Peter Emerson makes an interesting case for Francis Bacon, and it was his Sweet Swan of Avon documentary that inspired me to look further into the subject. De Vere dying in 1604 wouldn't stop further works from being released, not if there was a surplus of material when he died. Tupac Shakur died in 1996, and yet had half a dozen records come out over the next 10 years. He was a Shakespeare fan, so De Vere not being able to have any more works come out posthumously is a specious argument. So is the accusation that Oxfordians or Baconians don't believe genius can appear out of nowhere. Tesla and Einstein weren't royalty, and Ramanujan had no formal training, and no one doubts their genius. The sonnets and plays attributed to Shakespeare were written by Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford. Any unfinished works at the time of his death may have been completed by other writers of the time. Francis Bacon was responsible for the publication of the first folio, which contained several codes. The sonnet encryptions were the work of John Dee and possibly a Masonic-type Rosicrucian order. It wouldn't have been very proper for a nobleman of Oxford's rank to write all these plays and poems, but the reason for never publicly outing Edward de Vere as Shakespeare was to protect the secret that Henry de Vere, the 18th Earl of Oxford, was actually the child of Penelope Rich and Henry Wriothesley, the 3rd Earl of Southampton. Though this doesn't sound like a big deal to us today, back then it would have been a huge scandal affecting many lives of future nobility. That's Alexander Waugh's theory, but more importantly, his videos demonstrate that others contemporary with the times knew de Vere was Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, the supposed greatest writer of all time, couldn't even spell or sign his own name. He died a miserly grain merchant and, to his illiterate family, left nothing in his will to suggest he was Shakespeare, no mention of any manuscripts or even a single sonnet.